Alright, in level 2, we're actually going to solve absolute value equations. So, there's a couple things you need to do. First, for you to be able to solve an absolute value equation, you need to get the absolute value completely by itself. Right? So, on one side of the equation, there has to be an absolute value and nothing else around it. No pluses on the outside, no times 2, nothing else. If you look at all 4 of these examples, every single one of them already has an absolute value by itself. So if you can see here, at level 2, you're probably going to be just ready to go set to solve right away. There's not going to be any manipulation. That's why the word says in isolation, meaning it's already isolated for you. There's really nothing you have to do besides just solve. Now, what we do here, and this is exactly the same every single time, so please do not alter from this. Every single time you do the same thing in absolute value. What you're going to do is, you're going to take whatever's inside the absolute value, and you're going to write it into an equation. So x equals the number on the other side, or whatever's on the other side. In this case, it's a 7. That's one equation. Absolute value equations, you're going to have 2 different equations you need to set up. The first one is literally a replica of what it originally was, obviously without the absolute value bars. So the first one says, okay, I'm just going to take my x, my thing inside, and set it equal to 7. The second equation is going to be still the same thing I had inside. That never changes. Whatever's inside the absolute value does not change. But this time, it's going to equal the opposite of what's on the other side. Now, since there's no pluses or minuses in here, this problem's already done. X equals 7, x equals negative 7. That's it. That's all you have to do. Obviously, if you see in some of these other problems, you might have to subtract or add or do some other stuff. But in that case, that's all you need to do. So 2 equations, whatever's in the absolute value stays the same both times, equals the number, equals the opposite of the number. So then, excuse me, letter B, whatever's inside the absolute value stays the same. 2/3 x plus 6 equals other side stays the same. Second equation, inside stays the same, never changes, equals the opposite of what's on the other side. Now we have to move the 6 over, so you get 2/3 x equals 6, and then you would multiply by the reciprocal. Now obviously you can use a calculator if you want, or just do it in your head, which I know you all love to do. So when you multiply by the reciprocal, you just get x equals 6 times 3/2 ends up equaling 9. Then with the other equation, again you're going to subtract 6. You get 2/3 x equals negative 18. And then when you multiply by the reciprocal, same thing, 3/2, 3/2. You get x equals negative 27. And you're done. Okay, so take a minute, see if that makes sense. Try the other 2 on your own. Okay? Alright, here we go. Letter C. The thing inside never changes. Now, a lot of people are like, well, Mr. Walk, there's a minus sign there. Yeah, that's great, but it never changes, right? It's not a number. You don't get just a single number. It's not like there's a negative 5 inside. It's 2x minus 5, so it doesn't change. Same thing again. This time equals negative 6. You would solve both of these, add 5 over, divide by 2. You get 11/2 for the first answer. Second one, you add 5, divide by 2, you get negative 1/2 for the second answer. Okay? Last one, again, absolute value equals what we have. Absolute value equals the opposite of what we have. Now here's the problem with this. This is where you got to be careful, and this brings up something that I need to talk to you guys about with absolute value. There are times with absolute value when the answer doesn't work. For instance, if we were to plug back in 3, let's just plug 3 back in. The absolute value of 3 is supposed to, we don't know yet, equal negative 3. Is that true? No, that's not true. 3 doesn't work. And if you plug in negative 3, it also doesn't work. Meaning for this problem, there's what? There's no solution. Now, here's why. Notice I got my answers, I just plugged them in and checked. You might say, well, how did you know to check them? 1, you should always check your answers. I didn't for the other 3, but you always should. Sometimes with absolute value, there's going to be an issue where it maybe doesn't make sense. Second, look, I'm going to actually erase some things here. Look at the original problem. It says the absolute value of x equals -3. Is there ever going to be a scenario, no matter what you plug in for x, when you take the absolute value and it's going to equal 3 or -3? Does that even make sense? No, because the absolute value has to be what? Has to be positive. There's no way the absolute value can turn it into a -3. Okay? Hope that helps.